Mr. Leno and Mr. Huff and members of the committee, Mike Harrell with the Western Center on Law and Poverty. And I just feel compelled to just add one fact here to the last several of the speakers. I don't doubt their data is right. They probably have less welfare fraud investigators than we did previously. But it's also a fact that we have less people on CalWORKS than we used to 20 years ago and 15 years ago. The decline in the number of investigators rather strikingly corresponds with a 50% cut that we've seen in the caseload from 1998 until about 2003. So I just think that's an important consideration, and that county welfare directors have to make the difficult choice also of how to provide the sufficient services, child care, welfare to work opportunities that allow people to get off of assistance so that they can fend for themselves and not have to rely on government assistance. And I think those are the difficult choices that counties have had to make. And so I think it's not surprising that as caseload goes down and counties have to make those choices, that we're seeing some cases, less money going into those fraud investigation units. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harold. Mr. Mecker, you're going to get the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Leno. I represent the county human service directors that employ fraud investigators or who contract with district attorneys who employ. But the function is done under the direction of the people that I represent, and they're very proud of their fraud investigators. We're very proud of our eligibility workers. And if they were here, they would tell you that they've been cut, and if there were more of them, they could do more work. The social workers who work on child abuse and neglect would tell you the same thing. You're in the budget committee, it seems that's been your job for the last decade, is to listen to very excellent public servants who are telling you that they could do more with more funding. And I think that is the case, but I think it's important that we look at some metrics to the outcomes that we're achieving or whatever standards there are for what appropriate staffing levels are. And the only one that exists in this area is a recommended guideline. It's been in regulations for a long time. It's not a mandate. But there be one investigator for every 1,000 CalWORKS cases. In fact, it was originally promulgated when it was AFDC. If you run the numbers, the number of fraud investigators that was pointed out by a previous witness is sort of right in line with the recommended standard that's in regulations. And I think it's come down, as Mr. Harold pointed out, in direct relationship to the decline in the CalWORKS caseload. We've got funding challenges across our departments, and we're here before you year after year after year on behalf of all of these programs. I'm asking for adequate funding, but I just thought that perspective was important as we look at what ought to be the appropriate funding levels for all the different functions within our agency.
Thank you, Mr. Mecca. Seeing no more public comment, I turn to Senator Huff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, thank you for